I like to say I'm not afraid of death. It's more like death and I are old friends. It's not a subject that's written with a lot of levity in the writing world. And when I first had the idea for Death Dresses Poorly, I knew it had to be a comedy. I knew that it had to tug your heartstrings and make you laugh all at the same time. The idea for Death Dresses Poorly came from two things. Now, I've said this before, but just as a recap. The very first chapter of Death Dresses Poorly is something that actually happened to me. It actually happened to me at Chicago O'Hare Airport. I actually met an enigmatic man in black. We actually had a conversation about the sorry state of fast food in the world today. And he actually left at the end of the conversation saying, "No, this isn't my flight anyway, I just like talking to people." And that interaction always stuck with me, as it would with anybody. The second thing was Catching Hell. Catching Hell took 5 years of my life to write. That's the writing, that's the editing, that's everything. 5 years that I spent in that Ryujin world with the characters that were there. I got sick of them. I love them to death, but I got sick of them. They consumed every part of my creativity. And when I was done, or at least considered myself done, I needed a break. I needed a palate cleanser. I needed something to wipe my brain clean. And that something was Death Dresses Poorly. Now, you just heard me say that Catching Hell took 5 years of my life. Death Dresses Poorly took 6 weeks. That was 6 weeks of writing, one edit, and it was at a point where I considered it done. That is not common, but my fingers flew. It had a story to tell, and I've never told a story that fast. When it was done, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it. Did I self-publish it? I just tried getting Catching Hell published, and I have the standard new writer stack of rejections. But I was like, I'm going to try a smaller publisher. I'm going to try and put it out there, and if it doesn't work, then I'll do it myself. Now, I'd like to tell you that once I put it out for publication, the first place I submitted it to accepted it. That would be a real Cinderella story, wouldn't it? A story I didn't know if I wanted to get it published, send it to one publisher. Yeah, we'll take it. It was not the first one. It was the second one. Yeah, that's still pretty weird in this industry, I admit. But I had targeted smaller press, ones with books that I thought would fit with Death Dresses Poorly. And the first one was very good about it and got back to me quickly, something I wasn't accustomed to after the waiting for responses, if I got a response at all from my Catching Hell experience. But they said, it's not really something that we've got a spot for right now. We really like it, but thanks, but no thanks. Like, okay, I was used to rejection. The second one, that's where I met Fluky Fiction. The Fluky Fiction had a small but respectable collection of publications up to that point. They were young, fresh faces in an industry where I was the same. So I reached out to them. 2 days. They got back to me in 2 days. I cannot tell you how bizarre and unrealistic that expectation is. I hope it happens to you on the times that you submit. I got lucky, and I don't deny it. In a week, we had a contract signed. They were going to release Death Dresses Poorly. They liked what it was. I liked them. We got along great. I thought that was going to be it. I was convinced from the moment that I started writing it that Death Dresses Poorly was a one-shot gig. I had a story to tell, and I told it. It had an ending. I was satisfied with how everything had gone. I am on record, as I stated in a previous video, of saying I'm not doing another one. There is no sequel. This is the only story that Ethan has to tell. Artists were so mercurial. Now, as I've said, that first scene in Death Dresses Poorly is something that actually happened to me. It started the impetus of the story. Then it happened again. Not obviously the same thing, but another event in my life happened. It affected me, changed me. Death and I are old friends. And that incident stuck with me. Now, a lot of things were changed versus the first one where not as much was, but that first chapter, that first scene, bears a lot in common with it. And it's something I thought about a lot. Then I thought, the first story paralleled me. I always say that Death Dresses Poorly as if 20-year-old me was to meet 50 or 60-year-old me. I like to think that we would all be very adversarial to ourselves if we were in that same position. That was the story of Ethan breaking free and becoming his own man, or at least attempting to. That mirrors me in a lot of ways. At a very similar age, I moved incredibly far away from my family. What was the next big step in my life? Falling in love. I got lucky again. I fell in love with the woman who would end up being my wife at a very young age. Again, doesn't happen to everybody, but if Ethan was based on me, he had to go through the same thing. And that's where the idea for Death at a Wedding came from. So now I go back to fluky fiction, and I have a brand new idea. I'm going to write it. So I said that the first one took 6 weeks. Death at a Wedding took 4. 4 weeks for writing, a round of editing, and it was at a point where, again, I was happy with it. It is longer than Death Dresses Poorly by about 15,000 words, and I wrote it 2 weeks faster. There are manuscripts I have sat on for a decade and still haven't finished. But when the time came to tell another story about death, I couldn't be stopped. Fluky Fiction took it, and now, April 8th, 2025, Fluky Fiction is releasing it. So Mark, what does death have to do with any of this? Well, like I said, I'm comfortable with it. Now I remember very clearly when I was but a wee lad that I would wake up at night screaming, terrified. What was death? I didn't know. My family members consoling me. At some point I just go asleep and I don't wake up again. That is terrifying. It's terrifying for a 5-year-old child. It's terrifying for an 105-year-old child. We're all children. But as time went on, events of my life transpired as they did, I got to know it pretty well. Got to get very comfortable with what could and could not be. Now, I'm not going to tell you that the version of death and what happens when we die that I write in these 2 death books is what I personally believe, because you know what? I don't need to get into that. But I hope against hope that somebody who's reading it hears what I have to say, takes comfort and solace in the understanding that maybe that is the way things go. And they're good with that. I hope it makes them feel better. Made me feel better to write it. This is temporary. All of it. But I've never been to a funeral that I couldn't tell a joke at. Not in an offensive way. Comedy and death. For me as a writer, they go together. That's not the same for everybody, I admit, but that's my truth. I'm glad I got to share it. I'm glad that the story's out there. I can't tell you anymore that this is it. This is all the adventures of death I've got in me. I would be a liar, because I've proven myself a liar before, but maybe. Our relationships with death is a complicated thing. I am blessed with the ability to turn that complication into a story that hopefully people can enjoy, people can laugh at, and people can feel attached to. That is my gift. I hope you find what yours is. I hope that you can come to grips with the things that pain you. The thing about time is it's a river that only flows one way, and it only ends in one place. So I wrote a book about it. Then I wrote another. Maybe someday I'll write another one again. One day we're all gonna find that end. And for myself and for everybody, I hope when that happens, you are not afraid. I hope when we meet the stranger of death, either around our lives or at the end of it, we smile, because he's an old friend. And hey, whatever it means to you, be a hero.